Joining us now, a frequent guest on Fox News, Republican presidential candidate and tech entrepreneur, Vivek Ramaswamy. So we are happy to have you on. I'm going to talk to you more than just about Fox News, but good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
What do you make of this decision to settle this case?
I mean, it strikes me as a cost of doing business. If you're going to be a news network, I think it's happened to CNN. I think it's happened to a lot of news networks.
That has not
happened. It's a cost of doing business.
It's not happened to CNN. This is
never been sued for defamation. Never been actually settled.
This is the largest
it's definitely
in
large,
history.
and Fox appears to have the largest viewership and the market capitalization. So I'm not familiar with the details of this case. I'm actually more interested in issues relating to this country than disputes with media companies. But I will say that it strikes me that from
But you're
CNN
not familiar,
to Fox News.
You're not familiar with the case. You're not familiar with the lies about the 2020 election, about the election being stolen, that Dominion was somehow, fixing the votes. I mean, that's why they $787.5 million. You're not familiar with that? And you're running for president?
The details of a private dispute between a commercial dispute and the details of what the dollar figures are, that's not where I spend. That's really not where I spend my time. But what I will say is, look, there's defamation cases. People settle businesses. If you settle business disputes, Fox settled this one. It's actually not, I think, the pressing issue for the nation of what Fox News' settlement is.
I disagree with that because as you just admitted, you said Fox is the largest viewership, one of the largest viewerships among television networks, and especially cable networks, considering the eyes, the American people who are tuning in to Fox News to get their information and to get it accurately. I'm surprised that you would say that you're not concerned about this, and this is not something that is hugely pressing for the American people.
Here's the way I look at it.
Freedom of the press is the First Amendment in the Constitution.
Oh, exactly. You nailed it. The freedom of the press. So we have CNN, we have Fox. I'm here with you guys. I go on Fox News. I think that's great that we have a marketplace of ideas in this country. What I worry more about, Don, is the trend that we see in this country to controlling what different parties are actually able to say. The American way to bad speech is more speech. And so I think we need to actually embrace that culture and a more diverse marketplace of ideas. That's something we haven't done well enough in this country.
With all honesty, you're not answering the question. You're giving us platitudes about...
I'm actually unsure what your question is, Don. Do you want somebody to bash Fox News on CNN?
No, I'm not asking you to bash Fox News. I'm asking you to be honest about what happened on Fox News, about the lies that were told and them having to admit the lies and paying the largest defamation settlement to a media company in history, and you are a frequent guest on that network. Are you concerned about the credibility? Are you going to continue to go on that network even with those credibility issues?
I have far more concerns with the credibility of what we will call the mainstream media than I do with the credibility of Fox News. But
Fox is the mainstream media.
At the end of the day, what I say is, look, neither you nor I know the details because they settled it before it went to trial. I think the obsession over this is a little weird.
Vivek, listen,
it's a little bizarre.
I don't want to get into that.
There's real issues to talk about in the country. Why are we talking about Fox News and a settlement?
This is a very big and important story. And I'm not going to, we have much more that we want to talk about. But we will get there when we're ready to get there. We have you on to talk about these issues. This is a very important issue, and it should not be downplayed. This has to do with American democracy and Americans learning the truth about what happened in the 2020 election.
You want to know what
you don't think that's important?
I hear a lot about
comparing it to CNN is not this apples and oranges. It's not the same thing.
Well, it's different networks. Yes, apples aren't the same as oranges. You get one view through CNN, you get a different view through Fox News. I think that's good in our marketplace of ideas is that we have media that offers diverse perspectives. And you want to talk about threats to our democracy? One of the threats, and that phrase is an interesting one, threats to our democracy. I think one of the biggest ones is the chilling effect on speech in our country more broadly, where if somebody says something that a broad segment of the population or certain people in the government disagree with, there's an increasing trend in our country to silence that. And the answer to bad speech and alleged misinformation is not less speech. It is more speech in the marketplace of ideas. That's actually what a free press really means.
We're going to move on, but your answer was good, but it's not about what's actually happened. It's not relevant to what's happening. I think the answer to what happened at Fox News is to tell the truth. Media companies are tasked with telling the truth. That did not happen in the situation, and that's why we're asking you these questions. But let's move on.
Let's talk more about a diverse exchange of ideas. That's what I'm in for. Thank you.
Glad you're here this morning. Your campaign slogan is a new American dream, and I was reading through your platform last night. I wonder what you would do specifically to actually bring us together, not just Republicans and Democrats. What does unity look like to you, Vivek, for rich and poor, for rural and urban, for Republicans and Democrats?
That is the right question to be asking. And I think the main divide in this country, and I say this to conservative audiences equally, is not between Republicans and Democrats. It is between those of us who are pro-American, embracing the ideals that set this country into motion, and I think an increasing strain in this country that is anti-American, that wishes to apologize for a nation founded on those ideals. But that's not a 50-50 split. I think most people are in the pro-American camp. And, Poppy, I think one of the ways they would say we get to national unity, some people think, is by showing up in the middle and compromising. I respect that view, but I reject it.
You reject compromise?
I reject compromising on our principles. I think that the right way to get to national unity, and I mean this, to unite this country, is by embracing actually the radicalism of the American ideals themselves. We celebrate our diversity and differences. I'm glad we have 3 different shades of melanin on this set right now, 2 different genders. That's fine, but what I say is, so what? That diversity is meaningless unless there's something greater that binds us together, that unites us across that diversity. And I'm running for president to revive those ideals that bind us together across our diverse attributes.
I want to get into a few issues, one of them being China. Before I get to China, I just want to better understand something you said this week speaking before the audience at the NRA. Here's what you said, referring to back to 1865. Here it was.
I want you to raise your hand if you know when the first anti-gun laws were passed in this country. Raise your hand if you do. 1865. You want to know when it happened? We fought a civil war in this country to give black Americans the equal protection under the law that we failed to secure them in 1776. But then you want to know what happened? Southern states passed anti-gun laws that stopped black people from owning guns. The Democrat Party, then as in now, wanted to put them back in chains.
Then as in now, that's quite an accusation about the current Democratic Party. Who and what were you referring to?
I was referring to Joe Biden and his expression of wanting to put them back in chains, dating back to Lyndon Johnson. I think Lyndon Johnson's so-called Great Society was one of the greatest misnomers in American political history, where even back then in the 1960s, 70% plus of black kids were born into 2-parent homes. Today, that number is less than 30% in the opposite direction. The very policies that we implemented in this country in the name of helping black Americans have actually been disastrous for black Americans and all Americans. And I think that that's something that we need to wake up to.
In 1865, you were talking about the black codes, right?
That's right.
Passed, enacted to make it a crime for a black person to carry a gun in the
Exactly.
South. But you're equating that to the current president? You're referring to economic chains? What are you saying?
Well, I was referring to Joe Biden's, I think, ill-chosen expression to say they're the party that wants to put you back into chains. What I'm actually saying is that if you look at the policies of the modern Democratic Party.
About Democrats.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that actually it's policies like that of Lyndon Johnson and Joe Biden that are actually holding black Americans back.
Lyndon Johnson's the war on poverty?
Yes, and in particular his Great Society, where he actually created incentives in the family where if you're a family, you could actually get more money by not having the father in the home. Guess what you get? You get what you pay for. And I think it's been really bad for the black community. I think it's really bad for all Americans.
Do you have anything on this before I move on to China?
I don't see what one has to do with the other, but go on. I took up a lot of time with Fox.
Oh, it's fine. We have time.
I don't really see what one has to do with the other, especially and using the Civil War to talk about black Americans. That war was not fought for black people to have guns. That's not.
That war was fought for black people to have freedoms in this country. Yeah. Actually, that's why the Civil War was fought.
Okay.
And the sad part about it.
That wasn't fought for black people to have guns, I think.
Actually, you know, funny fact is, black people did not get to enjoy the other freedoms until their Second Amendment rights were secured. And I think that that's one of the lessons that we learned.
Black people still aren't allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
I disagree with you on that, Don. I disagree with you. And I think you're doing a disservice to our country by failing to recognize the fact that we have equality before the law.
And you live in this country, then you can disagree with me. But we're not. You mentioned in here that we have 3 different shades of melanin.
Don, I think we have to be able to talk about these issues in the open, regardless of the color of our skin. Black Americans today, to say that, compare that to 1865 and 1964,
I think for you to compare it to 1865 and 1964 is actually, I think it's insulting to black people. It's insulting to me as an African American. I don't want to sit here and argue with you because it's infuriating for you to put those things together. It's not right. Your telling of history is wrong. What part of the history was wrong? What part of the history was wrong? That the Civil War was fought. You're making people think that the Civil War was fought for black people, only for black people to get guns and for black people to have. The Civil War was fought for black people in this country to get freedoms, a noble mission. And I think that even after we succeeded, we had to actually secure those freedoms. To reduce it in a speech at the NRA to say you're making people think you're trying to say that black people to get guns, that was the reason that you're there at the NRA. That was the reason for the Civil War.
It is a
that's
fact.
Reductive.
It's not
and
reductive,
I think it's
Don.
insulting. There are a whole plethora of reasons that for the Civil War.
With due respect, I find your explanation reductive and actually insulting, including to black Americans, to say that black people today, compared to 1964, 1865, haven't made progress in part because of the freedoms we secured. And the Second Amendment was
black
part
people,
of what secured
hang on,
that
please.
freedom.
I cannot keep a thought if you guys are talking to me in my ear. So hang on one second. So to say that black people, say what you said again.
Black people secured their freedoms after the Civil War. It is a historical fact, Don. Just study it. Only after their Second Amendment rights were secured.
They were not secured their freedoms after the Civil War. That is not. You are discounting Reconstruction. You're discounting a whole host of things that happened after the Civil War when it comes to African Americans, including the whole reason that the Civil Rights Movement happened is because black people did not secure their freedoms after the Civil War, and that things turned around. People tried to change the freedoms that were supposed to happen.
And you know how they got
it?
They got their Second Amendment rights, and they actually got the NRA played a big role in that. But today, Don, the
NRA did not play a big role.
Absolutely, they trained black Americans how to use firearms.
That's a lie. That's not. The NRA did not play a big role.
This is just historical fact. But
it's not historical fact.
The part that I find
because you say it's historical fact.
The part that I find insulting is when you say today black Americans don't have those rights after we have gone through civil rights revolution in this country.
You are sitting here telling an African American about the rights and what you find insulting about the way I live, the skin I live in every day.
Here's where you and I have a different
freedoms
point
that
of view.
Black and white that black people don't have in this country, and that black people do have.
Well, here's where you and I have a different point of view. I think we should be able to express our views regardless of the color of our skin. We should have this debate
I'm not saying you
without me
express your
regarding
views,
you as a
but I think
black
it's
man,
insulting that
but
you're
me
sitting
regarding you
here,
as a fellow citizen.
That you're
That's what I
sitting
think
here,
we should say.
whatever ethnicity you are, explaining to me
whatever ethnicity
about
I'm,
what it's like to be black.
Whatever
in America.
ethnicity I'm, I'll tell you what I am. I'm an Indian American. I'm proud of it. But I think we should have this debate. Black, white, doesn't matter.
I think we should have this
on
debate.
The content of the ideas.
If you're going to do it, you should do it in an honest way and in a fair way. And what you're doing is not an honest and fair way. Okay? But we appreciate you coming on.
With due respect, Don, I look forward to continuing that conversation.
We'll
Thank
continue
you.
the conversation.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Papa.
We'll talk about China.
Yes, let's talk about China.
Next time you come back.
Oh, thank you. Much to say on declaring independence from China.
Okay,
Something you can
move
add
on now, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.